This is the Business Storytelling Show with Christoph Trapp. Name a top 20 storytelling podcast and a top 5% podcast globally. Christoph chats with thought leaders and experts to share tips and tricks that can help you tell your company's stories better to drive business results. Available wherever you listen to podcasts, live streamed on major social media channels, and part of the DB&A television network, available on most U.S. television sets and streaming on Roku and Amazon Fire. Here's Christoph with today's episode. Let's go.
Let's go, business storytellers. Hey, how's everyone doing? Back with episode 587. So we're moving right along here. And of course, with all the bonus episodes, if you haven't noticed them, we're way over 600. The bonus episodes are just YouTube shorts, 90-second clips that give you, some small update. The one I just recorded not too long ago is about AI cameras. So make sure you go back and listen to that if you're listening on the podcast channels. Today, we want to talk about how do you actually optimize your content marketing funnel? How do we create the right content for people? How do we make sure it resonates? And then how do we keep moving forward? And, the forward movement is an important part because here's the thing. Content works, but you have to keep going. So the next person that emails me and says, our podcast didn't work after 15 episodes, of course it didn't work because that's not enough episodes and enough content to actually stay out there. So Chelsea Alves is joining me. She's a content marketing expert. She's been talking about that topic on LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure that's how I ran across her. That's how I like to find guests. That's how I like to connect with people who are talking about the topics that you guys and gals care about. Chelsea, welcome to the show.
Hey.
I will say this, I got this new camera and it's so far over there. It's much harder now to fist
I know,
bump.
same. I'm trying to get it right.
Where is it? If you guys are listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure you hop on over to Spotify where you can actually watch the video version of the show and you can see our shenanigans as well. And of course, if you're watching live, appreciate you. Chelsea, tell me about the content marketing funnel. Why is that top of mind and why does it work? Why do people need to consider it?
Yeah, so the content marketing funnel, I think it's something that most people don't really think about. When you think of funnels, I feel like people predominantly think of sales funnels. And a content marketing funnel is kind of the same as a sales funnel, in that there's 3 different stages. There's the awareness stage, there's the consideration and interest stage, and then there's the decision-making stage where you're actually going to potentially move forward with a purchase. So you can apply kind of the sales funnel ideology to the content marketing funnel as well. So when you're thinking of the content marketing funnel, you want to think of what content you want to create for each step of the customer journey and the sales journey. And I think it's something a lot of people don't think about. You don't think about, oh, I've already engaged this customer. They're already interested in my product, but I'm going to keep serving them starter guides or starter ebooks that aren't probably of interest to them because they already know about your products or services. So you can lose people along the way if you're not presenting them with the right content and the right materials, and if you're not understanding their needs and expectations along the sales journey.
You know what's always interesting to me, of course, even content marketing is about sales, right? It's just different parts of the sales funnel. I mean, when I'm thinking about most of the content I write, even on christophtrapp.com, it's it's answer-based content, right? But at the end of the day, I'm selling you something because I have affiliate links, right? If I'm writing about AI cameras, as I mentioned, it's answer-based content, but I make money every time you buy one of the cameras. So at the end of the day, it is about sales. It is about getting people to pay attention to me and getting people to pay attention to whatever it is I'm talking about. We do talk about the whole thing of people starting and stopping. It's a campaign, right? 15 podcast episodes, 4 blog posts. Don't get me started. And we proclaim it doesn't work. What's your experience in longevity? Keep going, keep trying different things. What's like your philosophy when it comes to ongoing content marketing?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, another thing about the content funnel is it's a great way to identify gaps in your existing content. So if you're not already, have a whole content plan, obviously that's the first place you want to start. And then you want to map out each piece of content and see where that content falls within the content marketing funnel. So, does this belong in the awareness phase? Does this belong in the consideration phase? Is this more the interest phase? And then once you do that, you can identify where you need more pieces of content. And then that helps you see where your gaps are and where you need to create new pieces of content. I think this is always an evolving and long-standing process that's going to, you're going to have to continue to refine over time. Because obviously you probably want more pieces of content in the consideration stage. You don't necessarily need an equal ratio for each piece of content. So it's kind of like it's a lot of A/B testing. We talk about this all the time as marketers. You obviously want to see what's resonating with your audience, where they're falling off, which pieces of content they're attracted to, which pieces of content they're not attracted to. And I think that helps you identify what you should be creating, what resonates well with your audience, and help fill in the gaps in the content marketing funnel.
What's interesting to me is when you talk about the different stages is how clear cut actually is it that content is for a specific stage. I'll give you an example. Sometimes, I write about a topic and I'm thinking, well, that's really top of the funnel, right? Awareness. And then the people that read it all of a sudden make a purchase. And I'm thinking, well, maybe it is top of the funnel for some audiences, but for some people, they just were searching for something related and they were like, oh, maybe this is an option because they couldn't find something else, right, that solved their problem. So maybe I just talked myself out of that, and it is consideration stage. But give us some examples for the different stages of what kind of content would you create specifically?
Yeah, so I think, for like a top of the funnel content piece, when people are, just finding you in the search results, they maybe don't know much about your business, or maybe a friend has mentioned your brand to them. I think, starting off with kind of like introductory blog posts or thought leadership posts in your industry is a really good way to capture that audience and, present yourself as a voice of authority and show that you have expertise in that industry. I think that's showing you have expertise and authority not only shows Google that you're a trusted resource and surfaces you higher in the search results, but it also shows the end consumer that you're a trusted resource as well. So I think more like thought leadership based pieces, maybe like a starter guide, like say you are an online reputation software provider and someone's seeking a way to improve and boost their their reputation management and boost their online presence. So you might want to have a starter guide, like the go-to guide for reputation management for marketers. Maybe a blog post that's, breaks out different chapters of that starter ebook to kind of get them involved in your brand, what you sell, what you're an expert in. I think the first step is showing you're an expert. Once they, are more interested in your brand, I think in the interest stage, that could be presenting maybe case studies to your audience, maybe through an email campaign. Once you've seen they've engaged and interacted with your content, spent a decent amount of time on that blog post or that ebook using, some kind of marketing measurement software, then you can engage them with maybe a case study showing, hey, this retail client of ours, this is how they benefited from using our online reputation software. And these are the results they saw. So just more like maybe like case studies, white papers of results that showcase that you are and should be their vendor of choice. And then in the decision stage, it might be something more like a product one pager showcasing what your product features are, what you have to offer, how you differ from your competition, any unique selling propositions you have that differentiate you from your competitors. So to sum it up, I think at the top of the funnel, it's more awareness pieces, more, getting them immersed in what your brand does and having them understand you're an expert. Middle of the funnel, it's a little bit more tangible results, showcasing your value to other people similar to their industry. And then the bottom of the funnel is more like tactical. Here's what we can do. Here's how we differ from the competition. Here's why we should be your choice of vendor.
The one thing that always comes to my mind when it comes to the bottom of the funnel is ease of use for any product. And talking about ease of use is we use Restream, and that's the link right below here. If you want to live stream your podcast and even just record your podcast, I would highly recommend Restream. That, of course, is an affiliate link if you want to check it out. And I think you get a little bit off just by using that link. But how important is it to actually bring back, hone in on like the functionality when you're considering the product? I'll give you an example. I actually picked a product one time, and I don't use it anymore, but their thought leadership content was just out of this world. Like, holy cow, good stuff, awesome, whatever. Middle of the funnel, I don't remember. I can't tell you, but somehow I moved through the funnel, right? So it must have been good. And then I ended up using their product, and it was horrible. It was so like their thought leadership and their product didn't align, right? They sounded smarter than they were, if that makes sense. So how do you make sure that everything aligns, especially with the product, right? Because if I'm the content marketer, I'm creating the content marketing content, but I'm not involved necessarily in creating the product or updating the product or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think that's why it's so important to have that cross-channel communication. I feel like product marketing and content marketing, in my opinion, are very closely aligned. In my job, I personally work on a daily basis with our product marketers to, kind of understand where the gaps are in our products, what frustrations customers are currently having, what our roadmap looks like to fix those and address those problems. So I think it's kind of having that like cross-department communication and collaboration. I think that's essential. I think, product marketing and content marketing go hand in hand, and you can't have any gaps in communication. Because yeah, you're right. You can't, if you're doing your job and effectively writing about how you're a thought leader and how great your product is, but it doesn't align with how the product actually acts, customers are not going to be happy and they're not going to see you as a trustworthy source, and they're not going to recommend you to their colleagues. So yeah, it all has to align. And that starts with, an organization that really prioritizes collaboration and communication between different departments.
I'll try to come back to collaboration in a little bit here, but I know you already mentioned writing, right? Writing guides, writing articles, writing whatever, and certainly writing matters. And even, of course, now with the help of AI, we have more help. I mean, I'm not saying anybody should just have AI write everything, but I write, that's not even the right term. I brainstorm with AI Copyline on every headline. I hardly ever use it exactly how Copyline suggests it, but I certainly use pieces of it. Sometimes I combine 2 ideas, sometimes I combine 3 ideas. So I certainly do that. And so writing matters. That's my point here. But what are the best content types? Is it the written word? Is it podcast? Is it short form video? Is it a mix? It depends, which we don't like on the show because that's the answer to everything, right? But how do you determine what is actually the right way to create this content?
I think honestly, I hate to say it depends, but I think it does. I think most industry, or it varies by industry, right? So if you're targeting a younger demographic, I would say short form videos, social media marketing, anything that's kind of engaging or interactive usually resonates best. But you have to, that's, as a marketer, our job is to understand our audience, right? We need to understand the personas we're trying to target, what works best with them. So that's why I think it's important to have a mixture of all kinds of different forms of content. So video, podcasting, long form content, short form content, infographics, case studies, and actually measure the performance of each of those. So see how long people stay on those pieces of content, if they exit that content, or if they move on to another piece of content, what the bounce rate is once they land on that content. Do they actually stay? I think it's, measuring your content's performance is so imperative, because that's the only way you're going to know what's performing well. I mean, what I see with my own freelance work and then with my current full-time job is that interactive content seems to be the way the future is moving. I don't think people enjoy just reading 1,000 words of text without any graphics or videos or something to break up that text in between. I think that's kind of become an antiquated practice and also not the best user experience. I mean, even if you're looking at Google search results today, 5 years ago, it was just all text. It was blue links, some black text underneath. And that was, the way the world was back then. But now, if you perform a Google search, you'll see videos, you'll see image carousels, you'll see featured snippets with all kinds of different graphics and video content. So obviously, Google's a huge brand. They understand the way of the future. They have a lot of market research. So if we look at just them as a thought leader and for best practices, they're creating content and showcasing content that has different engaging interactive elements in it. So as a marketer, I think we'd be wise to follow suit and follow that best practice and do the same, regardless of industry.
So many different roads we can go down here, and so much great insights there. So we only got like 10 minutes to go. So we can't cover all my questions that I have for you, but let's hit some of them. And the one thing that was interesting to me is when you mentioned image carousels, for example. I've actually ranked 4 images that I wouldn't say were the best images, but they were unique, right? But they weren't highly produced. They just kind of got the point across. They weren't stock art. So keep that in mind, right? Just sometimes creating a simple graphic on an image can actually help you rank in a carousel. Now, you mentioned, I do want to give a quick shout out to my day job, voxpopme.com, try conversational insights, learn who your audience is and ask them why. Why are they doing different things? What are they doing? Why do they care about what they care about? So I hope you check that out. I actually tried to do there you go, boom, we don't need 2 probably. So you talked about measurements, though. So what's interesting to me about measurements, there's so many things that can go wrong that are out of your hands, right? Somebody screws up the SEO for some reason, and you don't even know it, right? They did something technically wrong. Or one of my favorites in years past is, how articles have like a width, right? This is the standard width that works. But when the website is set up incorrectly and it's too far, it looks horrible. The content looks horrible. And you would think the writer made the mistake, but the writer did nothing, right? It was actually whoever set up the website that should be held accountable. How do content strategists and content marketers, how do they maneuver that, let's call it a minefield of, unintended consequences from other people's actions?
I think, for marketers and SEO specialists, website owners, anyone who's dealing with the web page or content, Google Search Console is what I use personally. It's a great free tool that any business can use, and it helps you identify your page experience. It helps you see the number of impressions your web pages are getting. But yeah, going back to user experience, it gives you a plethora of insights. If your web pages are mobile friendly, if they're indexed, any on page like lagging when people click on a website, is the lag time too long? It really goes over user experience, which, as we know, is extremely important. Google had a page experience or multiple page experience updates, one as recent as a couple years ago. So they're really prioritizing having a optimal page experience. So I think content marketers need to look at that. They can't be in the mind frame of, okay, well, I drafted this content and now I'm done. I'm done with my job. No, you need to see how that content performs and keep a close eye on that. I think it's the content marketer's responsibility to make sure the copy they created is also performing well, there's no issues, and that they're optimizing the on-page experience for the end user for the best SEO results.
How can people like, me, and I almost said you, but I don't really know if you fit into this category, but I grew up in the writing area, right? So when you write content, and then if I wanted a photographer, I would call a photographer. If I wanted a designer, I call a designer. And I still do that sometimes today to an extent, but sometimes now I just hop into Canva, right? And I'll just update it myself. I'll just get it done. Or if I need a photo, I might just take a photo, right? Or whatever, or even video. I need to, move one of your quotes to the beginning. I might just do that myself. And, 15 years ago, I may have sent it to a video editor. So, but how do content marketers who grew up in one one area, one specialty, whether it's writing or something else, how do they advance and learn some of those other things to help them create the interactive content that you think they should in the future?
I think as a marketer, no matter what generation you are in, it's always important to be learning, because in marketing, things are always evolving. It's always changing. Best practices that were best practices a year ago might not be today. So you can't stay stagnant and just, not advance with technology. Unfortunately, we're in a world, or maybe fortunately, we're in a world where technology is consistently advancing. Expectations from employers and clients are continually advancing. So you kind of have to stay on top of that to be successful and effective and the best at your job. So for people who didn't grow up, using Canva or, other don't know how to podcast, I think it's kind of, taking the steps to educate yourself on how to do that. I mean, we live in a world now where you can learn how to do something on TikTok in 30 seconds. And not to say Canva is a program where you can learn it in 30 seconds, but there are a lot of resources out there, a lot of free resources. I mean, I could probably go to YouTube right now and find a 3-minute video on how to use Canva for beginners. So I think it's just taking the time and allocating that time to better yourself, further your education, stay on top of new and emerging trends, and just being the best marketer you can be. We have so much access to information. We're in the information age right now. So it's not even something you need to necessarily go to school for anymore. You can learn it yourself online. It just requires dedication and commitment.
And also, I think there's a certain level of just trying things and seeing what works and kind of evolving things. I'll give you an example. I just recently updated the intro to my to this podcast, and I think this may be the first episode where the guest picture is on that first opening slide. Your name has always been on the last slide, right? Episode whatever, and then with whomever. But I put you on the front, and I already noticed one thing I don't like about that slide, and that's our names. They're in bold, just like the headline. So I'm changing that, right? But back in the day, people would have had a heart attack if they would have said, "Oh my goodness, you're going to change it after you already used it publicly?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am, and I don't know, maybe we'll keep the guest on the front page. I don't know. I think it's kind of neat to have the guest on that slide." But back in the day, that didn't used to be a thing. So is that also important to kind of roll with the punches, make updates, and go, "Hey, it looked good on my computer screen when I looked at it here in my silo, but when I saw it in the wild, I didn't like it"?
I think so, yeah. And I think you have to do what is resonating best with your audience. I mean, you might like something and prefer something, but if that's not resonating with your audience, if you aren't getting good conversions, not seeing click-throughs, it's not up to you. It's up to what works best for your audience. So I think yeah. And like you said, you might think it looks good and then you see it in practice and you're like, oh, wait, I might want to revise this so I have the best experience for my users as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a skill to learn, however. I mean, that doesn't, because, I think when people go to school, they are taught there's a right or wrong answer, right? This is the wrong answer. And so it's really hard to do that, especially if you do it publicly. Let's maybe for 90 seconds or so here talk about interdepartment collaboration. And I know cross-functional anything, right? That's certainly a little bit of a buzzword. But what tips do you have to actually get that relationship with product marketing working, or get that relationship with the product team in general, or whomever you need to build a relationship with? What tips have worked for you?
For me personally, it's having recurring standing meetings. I feel like those meetings, number one, give you more visibility into what the product team's working on. And then vice versa, you can give the product team into visibility into the content or the marketing campaigns you're working on. So that's always helped me, just having like a standing meeting, maybe on, I don't know what cadence works best for your industry specifically, but maybe on like a bi-monthly or even a weekly basis could be helpful. Just like keeping that collaboration consistent and showcasing that you care about their team and what they're doing and their efforts, and recognizing what they're doing. I feel like a little recognition can go a long way. it's all about, building relationships. I feel like in any industry, you want to build relationships, especially with your colleagues. That's who you work with day in and day out. So recognizing the work they're doing, staying in consistent communication with them, showing that you care about what they're doing and how it's supporting your campaigns and your efforts, I think is the best way to continue that relationship and continue to develop it.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to be known and stay connected to people. Really quickly here in the last 30 seconds, tell us, how do people connect with you? Who should reach out to you? And Chelsea, really appreciate you sharing your insights today. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the best way to reach out to me is on LinkedIn. I'm very active and responsive there. And if anyone has any content marketing needs, from strategy to editing to drafting content, I'm always happy to help. And yeah, that's the best way to reach out, LinkedIn.
That's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. Please rate and review our show on your favorite podcast channels. And don't forget to share this episode with your networks. We appreciate you. Until next time.